My daughter-in-law held up the sweater I'd bought on Black Friday and laughed. "What is this, Dad, a clearance rag?" Laughter buzzed. No one defended me, not even my son. She had smiled last year. So why now? I reached into my pocket, fingers closing around the crumpled receipt, just as she handed me a folded eviction notice. What else had they planned to strip me bare tonight? Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments, where you're watching from right now. Her eyes scanned my gift like a dirty plate. The sweater I gave her was soft, deep burgundy, marked down from 70 to 28. I'd worked an 11-hour shift at the store just to afford that and a few toys for my grandson. I'd even kept the receipt, just in case the size was off. She didn't even touch the fabric, just pinched the tag like it might infect her. "This is why we don't let him buy gifts," she said, loud enough for the room to hear. Nobody laughed. But nobody stopped her either. I looked over at my son, Daniel. His face was flushed, but he didn't speak. He busied himself refilling drinks, pretending not to notice the tension in the room. My grandson, Tyler, sat on the floor, spinning the little toy truck I'd wrapped in shiny paper. At least he liked it. At least someone did. The receipt, still folded from my jacket pocket, was now on the coffee table, crumpled slightly from my grip. I hadn't meant to put it there. I just needed somewhere to set it while I reached for the apple cider. Somehow, that little slip of paper felt heavier than the room around me. "You could have just chipped in for the main gift," she continued. "No need to bring these." I almost said something. Almost reminded her that I wasn't just some stray they'd fed out of obligation. I'd paid the mortgage on this house for 17 years. But Daniel caught my eye, and shook his head, just once. Like a warning. I bit my tongue. I always do. Later, when the guests had gone and the wrapping paper had been swept into the trash, I sat at the dining table with my half-cup of lukewarm cider. The house smelled like cinnamon and smugness. Daniel came in slowly, as if he didn't want to be seen talking to me. "She didn't mean it," he said, rubbing the back of his neck. "She meant every word." He didn't argue. "I worked overtime," I said, quieter than I meant. "Those gifts." "I know, Dad. She told me not to buy anything. That's not how I was raised." Daniel sat across from me. For a moment, he looked like the little boy I used to read bedtime stories to. "I think," he started, "maybe this house isn't working anymore. For you. For us." I stiffened. "What does that mean?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. "You've got your pension. You could get a small place nearby. Something manageable. She feels like it's not your home anymore. Not your home anymore." Those 5 words struck harder than any insult that morning. I looked over at the coffee table. The receipt was still there. Flattened now, like a quiet witness. "I built this home," I said. "You think I want to live here, tiptoeing around your wife's moods? But this was mine before she ever showed up." He winced, but said nothing. "Dad," he started again, quieter this time, "maybe it's time you stand on your own." The words echoed like a slow drop in a dry well. And just like that, I understood, this wasn't just about a sweater. Or Black Friday. Or even space. It was about erasing me. Pushing me from something I created, with calloused hands and late payments. Rewriting history so I was just a guest. I nodded slowly, then stood. I picked up the receipt, folded it neatly, and slid it back into my shirt pocket. If they wanted distance, then let's see how far they were willing to go. Maybe it's time you stand on your own. I didn't realize then just how alone they were willing to make me feel. "You're choosing her over me?" I asked. 3 days later, the snow had turned to slush, thick, gray, and indifferent, like the mood in our home. I came back from the grocery store with a bag of canned soup and discount bread. The receipt still lived in my pocket, folded with careful anger. The sweater incident still sat heavy in my chest, but I hadn't said a word since. Daniel hadn't either. Until that morning. "We need to talk," he said from the top of the stairs. "No hello. No, how was your night?" Just those 4 words that always come before something bad. She was beside him, arms crossed like a courtroom prosecutor. Tyler peeked from behind the banister. I stepped into the foyer, boots still dripping, bags in hand. "What's this?" I asked, setting down the groceries. Daniel cleared his throat. "We've talked a lot. And we've made a decision." I didn't like that "we." It had the weight of a signed verdict. "It's not personal," she chimed in, which always means it's entirely personal. "We just need space. Our own space. As a family." I blinked. "So I'm not family now?" Silence. Daniel rubbed his palms together. "It's not about love, Dad. It's about privacy. About stability." "Stability?" I scoffed. "You think throwing your father out during the holidays is stable?" He flinched. "It's just, too much tension. Too many conflicting routines." "You mean I'm too slow? Too old? Or just in the way of your new furniture?" Her lips tightened. "You don't even try to adapt. I shovel your driveway. I fix your fuse box. I babysit when your sitter cancels. What more adapting do you want?" Daniel glanced at her. Then at me. "We're asking you to move out. By Sunday." I stepped back like I'd been slapped. "You're choosing her over me?" My voice cracked more than I wanted. "I'm choosing us, Dad. Our marriage. Tyler's peace." The door creaked behind me, and I turned to see Mrs. Garber, our next-door neighbor, walking her poodle along the sidewalk. She stopped, watching us like someone spotting a fender bender. Her eyes flicked from me to them, and then back to me again. I realized we were yelling. The front door was wide open. And my shame was leaking into the street. I walked past them, out onto the driveway, into the freezing air. They followed. "You could have talked to me," I said, standing under the bare trees. "We did." "We are," Daniel said, stepping onto the porch in slippers. The bag of groceries tipped over. A can of soup rolled onto the concrete. Tyler picked it up but didn't hand it to me. He looked scared. "You raised me better than this," I said, staring hard into my son's eyes. He didn't answer. Just then, the wind picked up. A loose paper fluttered from my coat pocket, the crumpled receipt. It hit the driveway like a dry leaf. Mrs. Garber's poodle bounded forward and stomped right on it with muddy paws. I didn't move. Neither did Daniel. But his wife smirked. "We'll give you until Sunday," she said. "After that, the locks change." I picked up the receipt slowly, shaking off the dirt. Folded it. Slid it back into my pocket like a relic. Behind me, a few other neighbors peered from behind curtains. The driveway had turned into a stage. And I was the broken actor getting written out of the final scene. "Even your neighbors pity you now," she said, turning back inside. And maybe, for the first time, I did too. I found the joint account had one name missing, mine. The next morning, I walked into the bank I'd used for 20 years. Same floor tiles. Same smell of stale carpet and weak coffee. But something was off, like the lobby itself could sense what was about to happen. I waited in the quiet line behind a mother depositing holiday checks. When it was my turn, I approached the desk and smiled at the teller, Allie, the same one who'd helped me open Tyler's savings account last spring. "Allie," I said, forcing calm into my voice. I need to check the status of my joint savings account. She pulled it up on the screen. Her smile faded. I'm sorry, Mr. Hayes, but I don't see your name listed on that account. I leaned in, confused. What do you mean? It's under Daniel Hayes and Walter Hayes. We opened it together. Her fingers tapped the keyboard again. She turned the screen slightly, but not enough for me to see the details. It's just Daniel Hayes now, she said gently. There was a change of ownership request processed 2 months ago. I blinked. That's not possible. I didn't request anything. Her lips thinned. If you like, I can print the authorization form on file. Minutes later, I sat at the little side desk reserved for concerns. She brought me a thin stack of papers and left me alone. I flipped through them slowly, and there it was, my own signature. Except I hadn't signed it. The scrawl was close, but off. Like someone practicing my name too quickly. My chest tightened. I reached into my coat and pulled out the only paper that still felt honest, the crumpled Black Friday receipt. I flattened it beside the form and compared the two. The loops didn't match. The angle of the W in Walter was completely wrong. This was forged. Daniel had taken me off the account. Quietly. Legally. Deviously. I flipped another page and my stomach dropped even further. The house deed, once jointly held, now listed a single name. Daniel Hayes. No Walter. No trace of me. I was a ghost in my own home, and now, apparently, in my own bank. Allie returned. Would you like to speak to a manager? Yeah, I said quietly. I think I would. 10 minutes later, a sharply dressed man named Greg Connors sat across from me in the glass office. I need to file a fraud claim, I said. Those signatures aren't mine. He looked at the papers, then at me. Mr. Hayes, the forms were notarized. Not by me. Do you recognize the notary stamp? I shook my head. He sighed, leaning back. We'll investigate. But if it was processed 2 months ago and you're only raising the issue now. His voice trailed off. I leaned forward, voice lower now. You think I'm lying? No, sir. I'm saying, the burden of proof becomes harder with time. I stared at him. The receipt sat on the desk next to the bank paperwork, creased, faded, but real. More real than anything they'd handed me. Greg closed the file. Sir, on paper, you don't exist anymore. The words sat in the air like fog. Thick. Heavy. Unshakable. I picked up the receipt and slipped it back into my pocket. It felt more like an obituary now than proof of purchase. As I stepped out into the cold, the automatic doors whooshed shut behind me. Across the street, I saw Daniel's SUV parked at the coffee shop. He was inside, laughing with his wife, sipping lattes with foam leaves drawn on top. Their world was warm and full. Mine had been erased. He didn't see me watching through the glass. But soon, they'd all see what they'd tried to hide. You co-signed for what? The moment I got home from the bank, I dug through the kitchen drawer where they kept all the important stuff. You know the kind, loose envelopes, half-used notepads, receipts for microwaves and warranties that expired a decade ago. My hands shook as I rifled through them, looking for anything, any clue, that would confirm what I already feared. And then I saw it. A glossy flyer from a furniture store downtown. Big red letters, holiday blowout. Easy credit, no down payment. And beneath that, stuck to the bottom with a dried-out sticky note, was a yellow carbon copy contract. My name, printed at the top in bold letters. Walter Hayes, co-signer. The list of purchases ran half a page long: sectional sofa, oak dining set, flat-screen TV, and even a child's bunk bed with LED stairs. I hadn't signed for any of it. I hadn't even been told. I heard footsteps behind me. Turned. It was Daniel, home early. You co-signed for this? I asked, holding up the contract like a burning brand. He froze. It's just temporary. We're handling it. You forged my name again. He opened his mouth to deny it, but stopped. I stepped closer. You used me. My name. My credit. My entire reputation, just to get a better sofa set. It wasn't like that, he muttered. Then what was it like? I snapped. Because I'm starting to feel like the only reason I'm still breathing is because they can't open a life insurance policy in my name without my consent. He had no answer. His face was red with shame, or maybe just the sting of being caught. From the hallway, a small voice piped up. Grandpa, Mom says you're not supposed to talk. I turned slowly to see Tyler, my grandson, clutching a juice pouch, watching from behind the couch. The words hit harder than any bill or betrayal. Not supposed to talk. The boy I used to tuck in every night. The child I once sang lullabies to, now repeating poisoned lines. I swallowed, turned away, and picked up the crumpled Black Friday receipt still resting on the counter. It had somehow ended up under the flyer, crushed beneath the weight of all their new things. Things bought with my name. My silence. My trust. You want silence? I said quietly. Then listen to this. I walked to my room, locked the door, and called my old friend Rick, a semi-retired attorney who still kept one foot in the courtroom. Rick, I said, voice low. I need to know how hard it is to prove a forged signature. He paused. What's the context? Family fraud. Property. Credit lines. Paper trail? I've got it. And a receipt that's about to become Exhibit A. He whistled. Then you're not dead yet. I smiled. For the first time in days. Would you defend your father, or stay silent like his son? That night, I sat at the dining table alone. A flickering light bulb hummed above me. The flyer, the contract, and the receipt sat in front of me like evidence in a murder case. And maybe that's what it was, a slow assassination of who I was supposed to be in their lives. The phone rang again. A collector this time. Mr. Hayes, your payment's 2 months late. Except it wasn't my debt. Not anymore. Police knocked before breakfast. It was still dark out when the knock came, 2 heavy raps, then silence. I thought it might be the mail carrier delivering early holiday packages. It wasn't. I opened the door to find 2 uniformed officers standing on the porch. One tall and stone-faced, the other younger and visibly uncomfortable. Behind them, the cold December air rolled in like judgment. Walter Hayes, the older one asked. I nodded, heartbeat picking up. Yes? We've received a report of elder conflict at this address. A claim was filed suggesting emotional instability and potential risk behavior from you toward household members. For a second, I thought he'd read the wrong file. Then I saw her, Danielle, standing a few feet away in her bathrobe, arms folded, pretending to shiver. I never wanted to do this, she said. But he's been acting erratic. Yelling. Paranoid. Obsessive. The receipt thing, the accusations. The receipt. I blinked. You filed this? Daniel appeared behind her, mouth half open, eyes darting between us. She's scared, he mumbled. We didn't know what else to do. You called the police on your father? I asked, staring at my son. Your father? I didn't think it would come to this, he whispered. The officers stepped inside. I noticed the tall one glance around the living room, noting the tidy decor, the toy truck under the coffee table. The same truck I'd bought on Black Friday. Sir, do you have any weapons in the home? the younger officer asked. No, I said. Unless you count a decades-old snow shovel. Have there been any incidents of shouting or threats? I shouted, I said calmly. Because I was erased from my own accounts, thrown out of my home, and accused of crimes I didn't commit. Danielle stepped forward, holding up the crumpled receipt I hadn't realized she'd taken from the table. He's been carrying this around like a totem, she said. He won't let it go. Keeps muttering about it. Keeps staring at it. It's obsessive. I stared at her, rage crawling up my spine. You think that receipt is a weapon? I asked. It's proof. Of what I gave. Of what you took. The younger officer shifted uncomfortably. The tall one sighed. Sir, we're not making arrests today. We're issuing a wellness order. We strongly advise you to vacate the premises voluntarily until we can sort this through the proper channels. Danielle's eyes sparkled like she'd just won a prize at a raffle. The neighbors were watching. Mrs. Garber stood across the street, morning paper clutched in her hand. 2 more houses had curtains half drawn, faces hiding behind the blinds. I was no longer just a nuisance in their house. I was a public problem. Daniel handed me a packed duffel bag from the hallway, one I hadn't packed myself. We'll cover a motel for a few nights, he said, his voice cracking. Just until this settles. I'm not a stray dog, I said. Then stop barking like one, Danielle muttered under her breath. The officers didn't hear it. But I did. I stepped onto the porch with the bag, clutching my coat and the one thing they hadn't taken yet, my voice. This isn't over, I said. The tall officer gave me a nod, 1 part sympathy, 2 parts procedure. Sir, you need to vacate by Monday, he said. Or we return with force. As the cruiser pulled away, I stood in the street with nothing but a duffel bag and a receipt she'd called obsession. But obsession was all I had left, until it became evidence. Deactivate the card, I told the bank manager. I spent the night in a budget motel off the interstate. The kind with buzzing lights, thin walls, and curtains that never quite close. My duffel bag sat in the corner like a condemned man waiting his sentence. But I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, the crumpled Black Friday receipt laid out on the side table beside me. I kept smoothing it flat. Refolding. Unfolding. Like some worn ritual of control. Proof that I had given, that I had cared. That I still existed. By sunrise, I wasn't broken, I was boiling. I walked into the bank like a man shedding skin. Greg Connors, the manager who'd spoken to me days ago, was surprised to see me back. I want to freeze any remaining assets under my name, I said. And close all access to family members. Effective immediately. He blinked. That includes your son? Especially him. He hesitated. Mr. Hayes, your name was removed from the joint account. I'm not talking about that account. I'm talking about the Legacy Trust Fund. That made him pause. See, they'd forgotten one thing. Years ago, after my wife passed, I set up a small trust, money from her life insurance, gifts I never gave, savings I never touched. I meant it for Tyler. But I never named Daniel or Danielle as trustees. I kept the account off the books, separate, hidden even from my tax files. It was still in my name. Greg nodded slowly. I'll have compliance block all withdrawals and transactions pending identity confirmation. Also, I added, sliding the half-flattened receipt across the table, I want this scanned and added to the fraud claim. Along with a notarized statement I'll submit tomorrow. He looked down at the receipt. This? That receipt is from the gift they mocked. The one I bought after working 11 hours on Black Friday. I've got phone records from my shifts. Pay stubs. Security footage if I need it. And the forged documents? They're just beginning. His tone changed. I'll have legal review it today. I nodded, picked up the original, and folded it back into my wallet. That piece of paper had once been about sacrifice. Now it was a blade. By the afternoon, I called Rick, the lawyer. "We're proceeding with a full civil fraud investigation," he said. "Forgery, misuse of financial identity, coerced property transfers. And the trust? Protected, for now. But you'll need to draft a beneficiary adjustment soon, if you want Tyler to receive anything directly." "I do," I said. "But only if he grows up to be a better man than his father." That night, Danielle called. I let it ring twice before picking up. "You think this is going to scare us?" she snapped. "No," I replied. "I think it's going to expose you." Her voice cracked. "You think money makes you safe? It won't." I almost laughed. "It's not the money making me dangerous, sweetheart. It's the truth." Then I hung up. I sat back in the motel chair, alone again, but not powerless. I opened my wallet one more time. The receipt, creased, tired, but intact, reminded me what they'd mocked. But more importantly, what I'd earned. And what I was about to take back. "Would you forgive your child, or fight back like this, father?" The lawyer texted me one word: ready. And for the first time in weeks, I was too. I came home to padlocks. I drove back to the house Sunday morning, not to move back in, but to collect the last of my things. What was left, anyway? A few tools in the shed, a box of books, maybe the old clock from the hallway. I had called ahead and left a message, but no one replied. Still, part of me hoped. But when I pulled into the driveway, I knew. The locks had been changed. My key didn't fit the front door. Or the back. Even the garage keypad had been reset. The windows were shut tight, blinds drawn. It wasn't a home anymore. It was a fortress. I knocked twice. Then a third time. No answer. Then I saw it, my winter coat. The same one I wore on Black Friday. Stuffed inside a garbage bag on the porch, crushed like it carried disease. Beside it, a cardboard box. Sloppy handwriting read, "Dad's stuff." I opened it. Inside were my cufflinks, a shaving kit, 2 paperbacks, and the crumpled receipt. Only it wasn't whole anymore. The top edge had been singed, burned halfway through and blackened. Someone had tried to destroy it, but stopped. Or changed their mind. Or maybe they wanted me to see it half dead, like a message. I pulled it out carefully, fingertips brushing the char. It smelled faintly of ash. They hadn't just thrown me out, they tried to burn the last proof that I ever gave a damn. My phone buzzed. A message from Danielle. "Don't come back again. Consider this a clean break." A second one followed. "New family. No ghosts." I stared at the screen. Ghost. They had taken everything, my house, my name, even the right to be a grandfather. And now they were scrubbing away the evidence that I had ever belonged. I drove straight to Rick's office. He was waiting in his cramped legal suite above a laundromat, files already laid out. "You look like hell," he said. "They burned the receipt," I replied, placing the half-charred paper on his desk. He examined it, then smiled. "Not enough." "Enough for what?" "To prove intent," he said. "They knew it was evidence. Tried to destroy it. That's tampering." "And motive?" "Well, they just handed it to us in ashes." He turned and pulled out a document with a gold seal. "What's that?" I asked. "Emergency injunction. Blocks all credit usage under your name. And, more importantly, forces an immediate freeze on property transactions linked to your son." I stared at the page. It had my name on it again. Legally. Bold. Undeniable. I want to hit them where it hurts, I said. Not just financially. Socially. He nodded. Then you'll need to let people see the truth. I'm ready. Before I left, I asked Rick to do one more thing. Make a copy of this, I said, sliding him the receipt. I already have, he replied. The original stays with me. You carry the story. As I stepped back into the cold, I tucked the half-burnt receipt into my wallet. If they wanted a ghost, I'd haunt them, with evidence. We heard everything, said the diner waitress. Small towns have thin walls. Not in buildings, but in mouths. By Monday morning, whispers had become wind, and that wind howled through every street corner, coffee shop, and Sunday pew. I walked into the Main Street diner, not hungry, just needing a place where the lights were warm and the silence didn't feel like exile. I'd barely sat down when she approached, Carla, the same waitress who'd served our family for years. The woman who once brought Tyler extra whipped cream, and used to call me Mr. Sunday Special. Now she looked at me like I was a page ripped from a book she'd read too late. We heard everything, she said, setting down a cup of coffee I didn't order. I looked up. Everything? The driveway. The police. The receipts. All of it. I raised an eyebrow. She smiled faintly. You live next to the town's nosiest street. And the Garbers? They've got doorbell cams with audio. Of course. She leaned closer. You should know, someone uploaded the footage. It's been shared at least 100 times. Probably more. I didn't need to ask which footage. The argument in the driveway. Danielle's voice. The child stomping on my receipt. I took a sip of coffee. It tasted like justice brewing. By noon, I saw the proof with my own eyes. The video had made its way onto a local Facebook group, Hollow Ridge Watch. A private page, 4,300 members strong. Someone had clipped it with subtitles. The caption read, "Elderly father thrown out after buying family gifts on Black Friday." Comments poured in beneath it. How can a son do this? She called his receipt obsessive. Are you kidding? This man deserves better. Who raised that woman? Does anyone know where Mr. Hayes is staying? Then came the article. The Hollow Ridge Gazette ran a 2-column story titled, "Thrown Away Father, Community Asks, Where is Walter Hayes?" Below the headline was a picture, me, from behind, standing on the driveway with my duffel bag in hand. Beside it, a zoomed-in photo of the receipt, charred and bent at the corner, lying next to a muddy snow boot. The town had picked a side. And it wasn't theirs. At the grocery store, the cashier avoided eye contact when Danielle tried to check out. Her voice, usually sharp and confident, stammered for the first time. At Tyler's school, a teacher reportedly asked during circle time, "What's one kind thing your family did this Christmas?" Tyler cried. By Thursday, a community pastor called me directly. "I think it's time we had a talk," he said. In front of everyone. And so, that weekend, a church bulletin went out. A new title for the Sunday testimony service. Family, Forgiveness, and What We Owe Our Fathers. They were naming it after me. At least indirectly. Would you speak up for him, or scroll past like everyone else? That night, I sat in the motel with the framed copy of the receipt Rick had made for me. The original remained under lock and key in his office. But this was my story now. Proof that sacrifice has weight. Proof that memory burns, but doesn't vanish. And for the first time since Black Friday, I felt something return. Not money. But presence. They forged a signature. Here's proof. Rick's office was warm and smelled like copy paper and burnt coffee. He stood by the window holding a folder the color of old bone, thick with everything we'd built the last 2 weeks, statements, timestamps, notarized forms, the credit agreement with my forged name, and right on top, laminated in plastic, the framed copy of the receipt. They forged a signature, he said, placing the folder on the desk in front of me. Here's proof. I nodded. And now? Now, he said, snapping it shut, we hit back. That afternoon, Rick filed formal fraud charges with the county clerk, alleging forgery, misappropriation of identity, and unlawful removal of a co-owner from jointly held property and financial accounts. He didn't stop there. Using the emergency injunction we'd already secured, he petitioned for an asset freeze on all accounts tied to Daniel's name, including credit lines, property transfers, and anything connected to the trust account. 2 days later, a hearing was set. Expedited. 3 days after that, the sheriff visited my old house. Not to arrest me, but to post a legal notice on their front door. By order of the county court, all financial activity under review. No further transactions permitted. Danielle's car was in the driveway when it happened. She watched through the window, jaw clenched, as the sheriff stapled the notice onto their newly painted door. She came outside yelling, "You can't do this. This is harassment." The sheriff barely blinked. "Take it up with the judge." Later that night, Daniel called. First time in over a week. "What are you doing?" he asked. "You're trying to destroy us." "No," I said. "I'm trying to stop you from destroying me." There was silence. "You know Tyler's been crying at school," he added. "Then maybe he shouldn't have to grow up learning that betrayal goes unpunished. You really want this to be public?" "It already is." And it was. By then, the story had moved beyond our town. A regional news blog picked it up. The headline: "Retired father accuses son of holiday fraud, community divided." The reporter quoted the Facebook video, referenced the church bulletin, and posted an image of the legal notice stapled to the house. One photo showed Danielle mid-yell, framed against a wreath on the front door. It was poetic. But what struck me most was how the reporter ended the article. When asked what he wanted most out of the legal battle, Mr. Hayes replied, "I just want my name back." And I meant it. Because names aren't just signatures. They're currency. They're dignity. They're legacy. Later that week, I returned to Rick's office for a deposition. On his desk sat the original receipt. Rick had framed it properly now. Clean glass, polished border. A single sentence typed beneath it read, "He gave. They mocked. Now they remember." He smiled as I looked at it. "You ready for what comes next?" he asked. I nodded. Because now, I wasn't just a father. I was a plaintiff. And for once, it wasn't my silence that spoke loudest. It was my receipt. The repo truck took their SUV first. They heard it before they saw it, the deep mechanical growl of the repo truck backing into their driveway at 7:43 a.m. Daniel ran out in pajama pants. The driver didn't even get out, just lowered the winch, hooked the back tires of the SUV, and started lifting. Danielle burst through the front door screaming something about calling her lawyer. The driver didn't flinch. He just held up a clipboard. "Finance company says you defaulted. 3 months behind." The SUV, still dusted in last night's frost, rocked slightly as the chains tightened. Across the street, Mrs. Garber stood in her robe, holding her coffee. Her poodle barked once, then fell silent, watching. By lunchtime, the internet had turned on them. The same Facebook group that had once debated potholes and yard decorations was now filled with screenshots, court filings, news links, memes. One post showed Danielle in mid-rant outside the house with the caption, "Black Friday buyer's remorse, he gave them gifts, they gave him court dates." Another simply said, "She stomped on a receipt. The county stomped back." And then came the job fallout. Danielle, who worked in PR for a regional chain of clinics, received a formal ethics complaint tied to the viral video and lawsuit. HR launched an internal review. By Friday, her profile vanished from the company website. Daniel fared no better. His office at the real estate firm had been cleared out. Clients didn't want to be associated with the son who sued his father over a sweater. Their voicemail boxes filled. Their inboxes bounced back with "out of office." And Tyler, poor Tyler, took it all in with the quiet confusion only children know. He didn't understand legal terms. But he understood that his world was shrinking. That the new toys sat untouched. That the man who used to tuck him in was now a name whispered like a ghost. I didn't take pleasure in it. But I didn't pity them either. Because consequences don't ask for comfort. They just arrive. I was at the post office mailing a letter to Rick when it happened. My phone buzzed. A voicemail from an unknown number. I played it. "Dad, it's me." Daniel's voice, hollow, tired. I'm sorry. I was wrong. We were wrong. I miss you. Tyler asks for you. Please." There was a pause. "Please come back. We'll make it right. Somehow." My hand tightened around the envelope. Inside it was a legal motion transferring the last untouched fund, the Tyler Trust, into a private community foundation. The voice in the voicemail didn't sound like the man who'd erased my name. It sounded like the boy I used to carry on my shoulders. For the first time, my son called my name, begging. But I wasn't sure if he wanted me back. Or just what I still controlled. "We owe you an apology," the church elder said. The church hadn't changed in 30 years, same chipped steps, same brass cross, same wooden pews worn smooth by generations of Sunday elbows. But that morning, it felt different. Full. Heavy. Not just with worshippers, but with watchers. The bulletin had been clear: community testimony, honoring elders and truth. And the sanctuary responded. I sat in the third row from the front, alone. But not unnoticed. Mrs. Garber was 2 pews behind me, whispering softly to another neighbor. Carla from the diner gave me a small wave. Even the school principal was there. But I wasn't here to make a speech. I came because they invited me. Because the truth had walked long enough in silence. Pastor Rourke stood behind the pulpit, clearing his throat. He wasn't a flashy man. Just steady. The kind of voice you listen to because it doesn't demand attention, it earns it. "We live in a world where we rush to protect what we own," he began. "But sometimes, we forget to protect who gave it to us." The crowd shifted, shoulders tightening. He didn't name names. He didn't need to. His eyes met mine once, then lowered. Then Elder Mitchell stood up. A man who rarely spoke more than 5 words to anyone outside prayer. "We owe you an apology," he said, looking straight at me. "We saw it happen. Some of us from windows. Some of us on our screens. And some of us from our own memories of doing something similar, looking away when we should have spoken up." The silence was holy. Then, one by one, people began to nod. They weren't clapping. They were confessing. After the service, people lingered. Some shook my hand. Others hugged me. A few just nodded, like soldiers in the same war finally seeing each other without armor. Then came Mrs. Garber. She walked up slowly, holding something in her hands. It was a small black frame, modest, but clean. Inside was the original crumpled receipt. Not the copy Rick had preserved. The real one. "I found it in your driveway," she said. "I kept it. I don't know why. Thought maybe you'd want it one day." I took it gently. The edges were still torn, the top still singed. But inside that frame, it looked different now. Not broken. Just honest. "Thank you," I whispered. She nodded, eyes wet. "It's not just a receipt, Walter. It's proof you were the only one buying love that day." I left the church with my coat zipped high and the framed receipt under my arm. But the day had one more surprise. As I stepped down the stairs, I saw a bulletin board near the entrance. It had flyers, meal schedules, and event posters. One was new. Annual Hollow Ridge Banquet, honoring Walter Hayes. Below it, smaller text read, "A father's name is his legacy. Let's give it back." Daniel stood at the bottom of the church steps. No suit. No smile. Just flowers. And regret. This isn't a gift, it's a goodbye. I didn't speak to Daniel that day outside the church. He stood there like a boy with no map, holding a cheap bouquet and staring at the ground. When our eyes finally met, he opened his mouth, but no words came. I walked past him, the framed receipt in one hand. Because the time for talking was over. It was time to choose legacy over lineage. Rick met me the next morning, briefcase in hand, at the Veterans Shelter off Maple and 9th. The same building where I'd helped install a heating unit back in 2008. They still had my name on a plaque inside the lobby. We sat with the director, a kind man named Calvin who walked with a limp and called everyone brother. I handed him the envelope. Inside, a signed document transferring every remaining dollar from the trust account, not to my family, but to the shelter. "Are you sure?" Calvin asked, eyes wide. "Positive," I said. "They taught me that blood is a contract. But character? That's earned." Rick added, "We've also attached a clause that earmarks a portion for scholarship housing for children like Tyler. Just in case he ever finds his own way back." I left the shelter lighter than I'd ever felt. No more waiting for apologies. No more bargaining with guilt. Just clean, quiet closure. That evening, I visited the town community center, the old gym-turned-hall where they'd soon host the Hollow Ridge Banquet in my honor. A few volunteers were setting up chairs, taping up flyers. I handed the framed receipt to the woman organizing the event. "This needs to be on the table near the entrance," I said. She looked at it, read the small caption Rick had added beneath the glass. "He gave." They mocked. He remembered. "It'll be the first thing they see," she promised. Back at the motel, the phone rang again. "Danielle, this time." I almost didn't answer. But curiosity got the better of me. "You gave it away," she spat the moment I said hello. "All of it?" "Yes." "To strangers?" "No," I said. "To people who understand value." "You gave it to strangers," she screamed. "Not us?" There it was. Not anger for losing something earned. But fury at losing what they thought they deserved. I didn't yell. Didn't curse. Just said the words I knew would end it all. "This isn't a gift, it's a goodbye." Then I hung up. Later that night, I took a walk past the house. The porch light was off. The wreath gone. The blinds shut like a fortress again, but this time, one under siege from within. And as I turned the corner, I passed a boy with a baseball cap and a shopping bag of groceries. He stopped. "You Mr. Hayes?" I nodded. "I heard what you did for the shelter," he said. "That's where I live. My mom too." He reached into the bag and pulled out something wrapped in plastic, a small toy truck, bright red. "It's not new," he said. "But it still works. I thought, maybe you'd want it." I took it with both hands. And for the first time in weeks, I felt something settle inside me. Not revenge. Not victory. Just peace. I gave them everything, and they burned it. But I gave strangers one thing, and they gave it back whole. "Please, we were wrong," my son said. I hadn't planned on returning to the house, not ever. But sometimes, fate folds itself into places we never expect to revisit. The morning before the banquet, Daniel called again. This time, I picked up. "Dad," he said. Just that word. Soft. Unsure. Like it felt foreign in his mouth. "I want to see you. Please." I hesitated, then gave him a time and place. Not the house. The park bench near the old public library, the one where he used to read comic books while I paid the electric bill across the street. When I arrived, he was already sitting there, hands clasped, eyes red. Danielle wasn't with him. "I messed up," he said before I could speak. "We both did." "I know," I replied. "I let her control the house, the accounts, even the story we told Tyler. I knew it was wrong, but I told myself it was easier." "Easier than what?" I asked. He looked up. "Easier than telling you I resented how much you gave. How hard it was to measure up." That struck deeper than I expected. "You didn't have to measure up," I said. "You just had to remember who I was." He nodded, wiping his face. "We lost everything, Dad. Danielle's out of work. My license is under review. The house is in legal limbo. Tyler," he paused. "He asked me last night if you were dead." I closed my eyes. That boy had once called me his hero. Now I was a ghost whispered between slammed doors. "I told him you weren't," Daniel continued. But I didn't know what else to say. He reached into his coat and pulled out something wrapped in newspaper. I unfolded it slowly. It was the second half of the receipt, the torn, burned piece I hadn't seen since they tried to destroy it. "We found it in a drawer," he said. "Tyler kept it." I didn't speak. Just ran my finger over the edge. "I'm not asking for money," Daniel said. "Or the house. Or anything. Just, tell me what I can do to fix this." I looked at him, long and hard. "You can start by earning your son's respect back. And if you still want access to anything I've built, you'll work for it." He blinked. "Work? There's a shelter downtown," I said. "They need help organizing, lifting, cleaning. I made a donation in your son's name. But the sweat? That's yours to give." He nodded, slowly. "And Danielle?" "She's gone," he said. "Staying with her sister for now. Maybe for good." I didn't celebrate. Not her absence. Not his regret. This wasn't about winning. It was about realigning. I stood, placed the torn receipt back in the newspaper, and slid it into my coat. As I turned to leave, Tyler appeared from behind the bench. He held out his hand. "I'm sorry, Grandpa." His voice was barely more than a whisper. "But I want to be good again." I knelt down, looked him straight in the eye. "You were never bad, Tyler. Just lost in grown-up shadows." He nodded, then surprised me with a hug. Quick. Tight. Real. That evening, I walked into the church for one final act of faith. I stepped up to the altar during offertory, reached into my coat, and pulled out the two halves of the receipt, now whole again. Then, slowly, reverently, I placed it into the offering plate. Not as payment. Not as proof. But as peace. As the plate passed down the pews, I caught Tyler watching me from the back row. "I'll earn it, Grandpa," he mouthed. And for the first time, I believed him. They clapped before I said a word. The Hollow Ridge banquet wasn't held in a hotel ballroom or a fancy lodge, it was in the old gymnasium of the community center, under fluorescent lights and beside a mural of veterans and factory workers. But when I walked in, it felt like royalty. Folded chairs stretched in perfect rows. A modest banner read, "Walter Hayes, in honor of dignity, sacrifice, and truth." People stood and clapped. Not a standing ovation meant to flatter, but a pause in the rhythm of a town that had finally remembered how to value what can't be sold at a discount. I hadn't even spoken yet. At the front table sat the pastor, the shelter director, Rick, and, quietly, toward the corner, Daniel and Tyler. Danielle wasn't there. Tyler gave a small wave. I nodded back. On the display table near the entrance was the framed receipt, now surrounded by printed photos, me on Black Friday years ago carrying shopping bags, me and Tyler at the town fair, a close-up of the burned corner, beside a quote that read, "A father's gift doesn't come with conditions, but it deserves remembrance." The mayor gave a speech. Brief. Honest. He acknowledged the story, the pain, and, most importantly, the silence of everyone who watched it happen. Then they asked me to say something. I walked slowly to the mic. Held it for a moment. Looked at my hands, scarred from work, calloused from decades of lifting things no one saw. "I don't have much to say," I began. "Except thank you, for remembering what I didn't say when I should have." People nodded. A few clapped. But I didn't come here tonight for applause. I came to close the door. I reached into my coat and pulled out a small item wrapped in cloth. The original receipt, framed, no glass, split in two, joined by a single golden tack through the corner. "I gave this once in the hope of love," I said. Then I carried it as proof of betrayal. I looked toward Tyler. "Tonight, I return it to where it belongs. Not as evidence, but as release." I stepped to the ceremonial candle beside the podium. It was lit for reflection, tradition at these events. I held the receipt above it. Then lowered it. The edges caught fire slowly, curling in like petals. The room went silent. Not in shock, but in reverence. It burned fast. Ash fell like snowfall into the bowl beneath. No one moved. Then Tyler stood up. Walked over. And without being asked, held my hand. After the banquet, people lined up, not for autographs, not for spectacle, but to shake my hand, thank me, and share small stories of their own fathers. Regrets. Hopes. Things they wished they could say. When I finally stepped outside into the cold night air, Daniel followed me. He didn't ask for anything. He just said, "I'm proud of you." I smiled. "Took you long enough." He laughed. And I realized, maybe for the first time, he was trying to grow into the man I once was. Not copy me. Just earn the right to be someone better. I zipped up my coat, nodded to the parking lot, and walked alone. But I didn't feel alone. Because I had something no receipt could measure. Dignity. I left with no gifts in my hands, only my name.